This video is called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And I feel that's where we are. I heard a few years ago Tom Kenyon speak about we are 1 minute to midnight in terms of the chaos phase and human extinction. And I think we're at midnight now. And there are things for us to be aware of. They're not necessarily pleasant things, but they are things that we should look at so that we understand how possession works, how synthetic synchronicities work, how remote voice-to-skull telemetry happens, how subliminal acoustic manipulation happens. And basically, I'm going to start to talk about the entire human species being MK Ultra'd through different technologies. Not that we haven't been MK Ultra'd since basically 1911 when the American Medical Association and the public education system began. But yes, we've been MK Ultra'd for quite some time. But it's reached a new technological level, and that technology is no longer just the inverted grid system of the Metatronic geometries, but it is also now those same kinds of geometries, and this is me circling back to something I was writing about and speaking about. Those geometries are now being put into our bodies and creating different grids inside of our bodies so that we can be accessed and manipulated and our consciousness kept on a leash. But I have a doctor, someone sent me her work, Dr. Anna Maria Michalcia. I'm not sure how to say her last name. But her work is good. And what I did is I went through all of her Substack blogs and just kind of did like a reverse speech analysis so I can point to what she's actually trying to say. But she had a possession experience that was common among targeted individuals. And she was able to see into the fourth dimension. And she saw the red dragon race. And she thinks that this particular red dragon is kind of the controller of the realm. But I can tell you that we know that we're in the demiurge and that Yaldabaoth has been placed here as the Lord. So Yaldabaoth is incredibly terrifying. And I might get into some of my own experiences with these entities. But I want you to hear from a person who has a lot of credentials. I mean, I actually have a huge list of letters behind my name too, but I never talk about that because it's about my lived experience. But she has a lived experience. And as a doctor and a PhD, I think she's a pathologist, she had an experience where she had to really question what was going on. And as I said in the synthetic synchronicities video, it's based on your deepest fear because they can read you. So the voice-to-skull technology is a two-way technology. It can send you messages like telepathy, voices, and everything, but it also knows what your deepest fear is. So she's going to explain what happened to her. And my bigger talk is based on her research about these self-assembling tiny little smart dust machines that we've been sprayed with for years and years. But it's those little smart dust nanoparticles that are inside of our blood now that are, is really making me question, is the singularity a place that we're supposed to realize suddenly, like, oh my gosh, we're in the singularity? Or does the singularity follow your consciousness? And the singularity actually has to do with this hive mind agenda of the raves and this whole, like, hooking them into some kind of black plasma grid that they have access to all our memories and all our thoughts and can follow us through the multiverse. So I think that's what the raves are. And I hope to get back to that. But let's listen to what this person describes as a paranormal experience. But I'm going to tell you, that it's all based on technology. So even this red dragon thing, it is probably a real poltergeist within the realm because we know the red dragons are here. But she's so deeply afraid of taking her own life that the way this poltergeist gets her is it grabs her deepest fear and it manipulates her into actually performing a ritual abuse to her own body. So you have to know what your fears are to know how you can be accessed by these synthetic synchronicities, which I was talking about before. If you're going to be traumatized by hearing about a paranormal possession, turn the video off now. And you can, like wait 10 minutes and whatever and don't listen to her, and then see when I get back on the screen, you can turn your volume up again. Okay, so don't re-traumatize yourself. But I think it's important for you to know how they are using these things as a technology, and they can leash your consciousness. She does come up out of it through what she considers like angelic assistance. But again, that's based on something that she believes is an angel that comes to her rescue. But I would also say that that was probably a trick too. So use your own judgment and listen to her story.
That was clearly not my own thoughts that said, you need to die. You need to kill yourself. You need to die. And I'm a very spiritual individual. I don't have a psychiatric history. I had nothing in my life to be unhappy about in terms of, and because of my spiritual belief, I would never ever do anything like this, which is to commit suicide. So I've, again, no psychiatric history, no history of depression. I've never been on psychiatric medications, anything like this. And what happened was, it was almost as if I looked as if I was possessed, that dark circles under the eyes. And I've noticed that, now that I have a vision and I have my own experience, I can recognize other targeted individuals who have certain personality changes. And there are certain features of what they look like, which is also how I look like. So what happened then, one day I went home, and I was no longer in control of my own body. And what happened was that my brain was accessed. It was as if I was under anesthesia. I was still aware that I am in my body, but I had no motor control. And something else hacked my brain, took a butcher knife, and I sustained 23 stab wounds. Then I almost bled to death. So then what happened was that in that anesthetic mode, I actually left my body and I knew that I was dying. So I have a long-standing spiritual practice, and I have, I've been training in remote viewing. I've left my body before. So when that happened and I left my body, I knew that the body was dying, bleeding out. I saw this red demonic dragon that was manipulating my brain like a puppet, and it was actually using my body to perform this, what was literally a satanic ritual. It was a sacrificial death, remote assassination. At the same time, I had, when this was happening, I had visions that there were FBI cars outside of my door, that there was armed military people, there were helicopter sounds over my head. And this was a very scary experience because it felt like I was under attack. I couldn't differentiate what was real. It looked completely real. It was like visual hallucinations, but it was absolutely real to me. And it was, now again, in retrospect, I know that these were inserted, but at the time it was like, well, my house was completely encircled by military who had gunpoint, pointing guns at me. And So what happened then, so when I left my body, I realized that in my soul, I had now committed suicide. The other thing that happened was that in this remote control, which there are Army programs that, for example, they can remote control your brain and have the victims cut off their limbs. For example, amputate their own limbs. They've discussed this, and I've posted some of that information on my Substack. Like Giordano from Georgetown University discusses this, but also in the Army. So they have the ability through neurotechnology, remote, accessing the brain to remote assassinate anybody. This program is called SATAN, SATAN, remote assassination through artificial intelligence. They can hack your brain in that way. So what I was experiencing then was when I left my body and I realized that the body was dying, I'd also, there was ingestion of pills, there was ingestion of eating glass, I had arterial bleeding, blood was everywhere. And so what happened then was that when I left my body and I realized this body is dying, my spirit saw this dragon and experienced everything that this satanic being was doing, and I saw how it was controlling the world, actually. So what happened was, because I had done this, I now was stuck in a loop of reliving a certain experience, and it was as if I was in that loop stuck for millions of years. And that because this satanic entity had succeeded in killing my body, but that I did it through my brain, even though it was remote control, I and my soul was still responsible for that action. And so I was lost in this oblivion for millions of years, what seemed like. And that...
Okay. Just that part is what I want you to listen to again and again and again. And I have reversed her speech so that I can use kind of what she's actually saying and what she was shown. So I have had very scary experiences like that also. And she talks about being like under anesthesia, which is what I call sleep paralysis. You don't have to be a doctor or a PhD of anything to have your experience. And so we have experience here. And this red dragon thing is in another dimension. And yes, that is the Draconian Empire, the dragons. And they are not very loving. And they feed on our fear, but they want to know what your fear is because they can insert, remember, she said they inserted the idea that FBI agents were surrounding her and helicopters were going over her head. And then she will actually get on to the point where she found out that she was full of the graphene oxide tubules as if she had received many, many. And I've said that in videos before, that I've had clients have these kind of weird sleep paralysis, near-death experiences, or actually death experiences, and it feels like they're in some kind of bizarre dream. And then when they get tested, and they have never had, but their body and their blood is showing tons of remotely accessible nanobots, self-assembling little magnetic particles that are in our bloodstream. So all of us have that to some extent now, and you can tell who's graphinated. So I said the word graphinated in my last video by how quickly they are possessed by the red dragon. How quickly do they come into like extreme anger and self-harm and self-abuse. So what if the singularity is not a place that we're going to, but what if the singularity is a place that they've installed inside of us through this kind of smart dust geoengineering that they have been doing for years and years, and then they access that through, as she said, various HARP technologies and antennas and electromagnetic frequencies. But she referred to Dr. James Giordano, who I've shared many times, and his West Point presentation of 2017, where they can make a super soldier do anything that they want. And they tested this in Iraq, and many of those soldiers did then exit. Her deepest fear, they know. And so, lots of generals and high-level people have also contacted me. But they got into her deepest fear, and they know all of our deepest fears because they can read you. These are two-way telemetry. And her work with the whole thing of the nanotechnology as a surveillance project, that's what it is, but it's also to create kinds of weird virtual realities that she just described, where you can have like a mass rage and then be told to pick up a knife or a bomb or whatever and go out and do some destructive things. I do think that that is what is going on. And I have heard of other people, I used to read the paper to an elder client that I had in 2013 and 2014. And Claude and I were reading the weirdest stories, and it would always start with ringing in the ears, like tones and pitches in the ears, and then voices in the head. And the voices in the head were not their voices, but one of them that Claude and I were reading back then was someone was told to like put their wife into what was it, honey? A wood chipper, like into a wood chipping thing that like would chip her up into a billion little pieces. And they heard the voice in the head and they acted on that. So even back in 2013, I heard this stuff. So we also heard a whole bunch of people who said that they heard the voice of God in their head, and they were told that someone that they were in the elevator with was the devil and that they needed to kill them with their little pocket knife. And they did, because they heard this voice of God. Now, in Anna Maria's story, she also has some like light being come and save her. And then she thinks she has a mission and a purpose for humanity. And I would say that this red dragon devil and this white being are the same being. Anna Maria may not understand that, but that's the game of midnight in the garden of good and evil. I do believe that that red dragon and that being of light were the same being. And what they play is, you hear about like the devil or the demon on that shoulder is an angel on this shoulder, is they play this game with humanity, and they're feeding on all of it. They're now also feeding on her like purpose and her mission to save humanity. And what she doesn't realize is all these grids and antennas and technologies and everything, they've always been here. And then when she got that to the part of like being in this loop for millions of years in oblivion, oh, she just saw what we're doing. She also was just giving this huge insight to exactly what goes on here, which I explained in my last video too. Like, in 1907, we had the Cabbage Patch Kids and the foundlings and the orphans and the orphan trains and the orphan auctions and the incubator babies and all that. And we have that going on now. So her dream in the like 8 minutes or so that I shared of you, just that part, I think she had like a huge insight into what's going on here. And then her work, about all of this stuff, which I shared this on my community page on YouTube, and I also shared it on Facebook. And you can make screenshots of this so that you can understand this wireless mind control stuff is bidirectional, meaning it's two-way, and it is run by the HARP and the ELF fields. The FDA approved long ago these magneto-electric nanoparticles. They are being used as superconducting magnets to also the iron in our blood and our brains. And when I took the EDTA and did that whole big parasite cleanse, and I'm still doing the EDTA zeolite every day and other things also, the first thing I felt was like all of these crystals in my brain start to break. It was like the major parasite was crystalline in form. And don't think that crystals are your friend, folks, because what happened in Atlantis was the same thing as I see now with some of the screenshots that I shared from these scientists, where they will control everybody's brain through yet another supercomputer based on crystal technology, which is exactly what happened in Atlantis. So it's like we're repeating the same thing to oblivion. Again and again and again, we're doing the same thing. And then someone sent me this stuff about that fellow from the Human Design. And that fellow also thinks that this is going to be great, that we're going to be all controlled by this supercomputer crystal. And this Ra character, I think, is a red dragon. So, I mean, some of the seers who can see also pinned him as a dragon, but I don't think he's benevolent in any way. So here's the whole backstory. You can make a screenshot of that, of this Ra guy, right? He also was channeled. I mean, it was like she just got a visit from a red dragon, and this Ra Uruhu guy came with a transmission of a voice. A voice came into the head of this person who put together the Human Design over 8 days. And he told that crystals of consciousness were what connect us to, quote, source. So I have been working on this whole thing because those crystals of consciousness, they have actually been putting in our brain. And some of the photos behind the speakers, those doctors that have been speaking with Anna Maria, are the like graphene oxide tubules and the way that all of the blood cells are clotting to give way to these little machine things that are self-assembling. And it doesn't matter whether you've or not, because this stuff, as I've said, is transferable by breathing, by fluids, by DNA, you know, like it's transferable. So we all have these cooties on us. And she's very big into Morgellons and the work of various doctors who were realizing this itchy, like synapse stuff that's connected to your nervous system is Morgellons disease. And this has been going on for years. But why would they want to control our brains? Why would they want to replace what is a natural neural pathway with graphene foam that is biocompatible to the growth of cortical cells so that they can control our consciousness and mimic our consciousness from hydrogel and these graphene oxide tubules? So the interaction between the artificial brain that they can create is a copy of you. And if it's a copy of you, because we're in this copy machine, basically, it's copying all your thoughts, your ideas, your creativity. It can never copy your magic, but it will try. So I do want to get into our magic also. But the artificial brain interacts with a quantum time crystal. And I believe that that is then uploading our consciousness to what this guy Ra says is source, but what I think is actually Yaldabaoth's AI cloud or the rapture of all our consciousness is being uploaded into this cloud. So as many times as they can copy you and your thoughts and your expressions and your artistic ability and the song that you're singing and everything, that's a way of magnetically holding onto your consciousness or putting your consciousness on a leash throughout the multiverse. So when people have been talking to me about this fractal virus that is happening here will affect the multiverse, it's because you have this form, but you have many other forms. And also when you exit from this place and you do go back into the multiverse or even into the void, they will still have like this quantum computer watching and surveilling you. And then I get into like a little bit of that Wes Penn stuff where they're trying to make like supercomputer cyborgs of us. And if they can make you chop off your limb here and cut yourself up here, imagine what you would be. You would be like a cyborg warrior out there in the multiverse. And that's what Wes Penn, and I'm just pulling together everybody's ideas because that's what I do. I'm that 2959 Libra of that person's idea, that thought, sharing that information of something that someone told me, and we all are putting this together. So what if the singularity has already happened and most of the population is, being remotely controlled by some friggin' red dragon Ra thing? I'm not buying it. I'm not into it. And I've seen definite changes in people who have enough graphene in their body that they're just not even, they don't connect in the way that I understood them. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like, who are you now? Like, I thought I knew you, and what is going on here? And it's not that people can't change and that, maybe they're making new agreements or whatever, but I am just looking around going, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this is what the simulation is doing right now. And it's creating a singularity based on being able to have you and your creative magic and a complete copy of you in an artificial brain that can wire the particles and the thoughts and the waveforms to your consciousness. So that, I think, is what the singularity is. It's not like we're going to pop into like Mark Zuckerberg's living room and suddenly like be playing in his virtual reality. It's that the virtual reality is inside of you and they can access your consciousness if they have a complete virtual copy of you, including all your brain thoughts through telemetry. They can continually send ideas and thoughts that are not yours and make you act on them. So that would be like the ultimate cyborg warrior race. What they're telling us right now, as I said in like Jonathan Mercedes' Blood Wars book, is they're telling us we're mongrels and we're not worthy and we're the lowest consciousness. But I actually think that we are the most beautiful consciousness in the multiverse because we're very heart-centered. And when she compares it to the draconians of the draconic empire of the red dragon race, they don't care. It's all about like sadistic abuse, ritual abuse, and then coming up and saying, oh, I'm your angel. I can fix you now. That is exactly how those things work, which is why they're playing both sides of the demon and the angel. I don't trust any of them. She may not know that. If you know Anna Maria, you can let her know that. But I have the shamanic perspective on that. This is what's always been going on. It's just now those entities can get really placed in you as a possession through the graphene in your bloodstream. And one of the doctors that she works with, he has that dark light microscopy that he did a whole bunch of photos about what's in there. And these self-assembling structures, I mean, what does that look like? Right? That's why I don't like to look at Twitter, because there's light technology. Whenever your screen comes on, I think it hooks into those particles and these little geometries that are in the blood. These are things in the blood. People have this stuff in their blood, okay? So are you a human anymore? Or are you well on your way to becoming a rave? Because you're not a human anymore. That's why I suggest you consider some of the protocols that I have shared with you as entertainment, okay? But we know from Dr. Yuval Noah Harari that humans are hackable animals. And the whole idea that humans have solar spirit or free will, that's over. Noah Harari, which I've showed before as like the good friend to Russell Brand. So these are all controlled opposition. He says, today we have technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Everything is being digitized and everything is being monitored. And he's an advisor for the World Economic Forum. So if we're hackable, are we hackable outside of this realm also? And that's a big question for me, because when I have gone to the void, my consciousness is still in existence. You know, even if you don't have a physical body and you're in that dazzling darkness of the black fabric of space and you are voidal again, or what people might recall as 0 point. I mean, I don't really refer to that as 0 point, but the void is a place where your consciousness exists. And what if you then have this remote control still happening from this place to your consciousness, wherever it goes? That means the singularity goes with you. So these are huge concepts. And yes, I would rather just like play with my dog and eat popcorn and, you know, but that's not what I'm doing right now, because I'm a librarian. I'm a galactic librarian, and I'm looking at how this singularity happened. Most people, I believe, are already in the singularity. In fact, evidence for that is how people will jump on a bandwagon and go with like the most sadistic, like assassination attempt that they can. And, you know, that has happened for me. I mean, clearly I had to take some people off of my YouTube page because I kept getting, what do you call that? When they tag you, like they were tagging me with their video of their opinion. And it was like this bandwagon thing, like let's assassinate Lalita and let's argue about it. And one person will be pretending to be her devil and one person will be pretending to her angel. And I was like, oh, I'm out of here. You know, but these games are going on where the more sadistic, the more abusive, the more like character assassination, the like zero feelings about it at all to like 100% angry about it. That's how you know you're in the singularity, is because you are playing that role of sadistic assassin. You know, it's fine to have critical thinking. It's fine to have a look at things, but you know that you're possessed by, or you're what I'm going to call graphenated, because the word possessed has like a religious thing to it. You're fully graphenated when you've got like, you know, just angry, sadistic personality where you want to take somebody down. And that's most of the human race now, given the road rage and the yuckiness that I'm seeing out there. And the whole tying it into the digital realm, that's why I keep saying, do not be looking at these online things for 16 hours a day, because that is doing the self-assembling, because it's a technology coming through your eyes and then coming into your brain. And it's assembling all of those little crappy things that I just showed you a picture of. Okay, so they are assembling based on how much time you spend on Twitter, which is why I have nothing to do with Twitter, not remotely interested. And Klaus Schwab says one of the features of the fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but rather it changes us. So she's still, Anna Maria, she's still a doctor. She still goes to her job. But in her inner world, she can be put into what she calls an anesthesia, or what I call a sleep paralysis, and then be given like these terrifying red dragon dreams of self-inflicted harm. And they'll know that her self-inflicted harm is worse than any other harm because they can read her thoughts. Okay, it's like telepathy. It's called telemetry, where they're sending you thoughts and they're reading your thoughts back. So what if we're already in the singularity and this thing is actually trying to keep us here for millions and millions of years, cycling around in oblivion? And wherever you go outside of this thing, it's tracking you or surveilling you or sending messages to you to make you some horrible Dr. James Giordano warrior cyborg thing, because the human is the most amazing galactic expression as far as I'm concerned. We have very deep feelings, very big hearts, so we can get stirred by our emotions very easily. And yeah, so people will be like, oh, that won't matter. Your brain doesn't go with you. Your blood type doesn't go with you. But I would say an imprint of everything you are, ever have been, is carried with you in your consciousness. Your consciousness is something that outside of this experience that has amnesia, when you are in the void, you know everything, and you have been everything, and you are aware of everything, so that it can be like that nasty little email coming through to your consciousness out there. I'm not sure. This is speculation, but I have to say, are we already in the singularity? And what the heck are these raves, right? Because now I think these raves are going to be sitting around in abandoned basements of a destroyed city, staring at a screen, because every one of these screens that we're looking at is storing our memories, our thoughts, and our impressions right now, so that those little cyborg raves can tune into that and control you through that. So all your pictures on Instagram, all your thoughts everywhere, is how they would be able to like tune to you, tune to your consciousness, remember your memories. And it seems to me like they're going to be like the little police officers, because they apparently, according to my guest, will be much smarter than us and will be able to manipulate and control us through their massive brains that store this information from these liquid plasma black mirrors that you're looking at right now. It's storing your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. So that's why I haven't been making like dance videos and music videos for you, although I used to do that kind of stuff, because I'm only doing that in private now. I'm not sharing that kind of stuff on the screen anymore. But I'm as magical as I ever was. And I can come up with a song ditty in no time and sing it, which I did recently. And Claude was remembering some of my old songs that I used to sing. So, what about our magic? I would say that our magical abilities are completely copied by this realm. So when I was a little kid, my problem was that I could not keep my feet on the ground. And I used to have dreams of like levitating so high. I would keep flying like I could fly, and I would go so high. I'd be way up there, and I did not know how to get down. Okay, so I knew that gravity was fake, like gravity is just this weird concept here, and that we can all fly, that we're all magical. And that's why in the old pictures of like Lilith and everything. She has wings because gravity's not real. You can levitate out of here. You can fly right up out of here. And the car and that form of transport, everything copies us. So whatever it is that is mechanical is actually originally magical in you. In fact, one quick little story, because it's 40 minutes now and I'm going to go. One quick little story was when I was a young mother. So it often has to do with like how deep my emotion is, where my magic comes from. Deep emotion, my willpower is where my magic comes from. And I was driving home from Western New York where my grandma lived. And I had been visiting her a long drive back to New Paltz, New York, Gardner, New York, where I lived at the time with my baby. And I was coming home over the Ellenville Pass of Route 209 over Minnewaska State Park, of that big, huge bottom of the Catskill mountain range. And I was falling asleep. So I got like, oh my gosh, I'm falling asleep. I'm not going to be able to drive this car over these windy, curvy mountain paths. I could go right off a cliff. And the next thing I knew, the car was hovering above the road. So I want to really transfer this to you. It was based on my emotion. It was based on my love of my baby. So love is in there. And it was based on my willpower to get us home safely. So that's magic right there. My emotion, my love for my baby, my will to get us home, and my car hovered above the road to the point where it was hovering and I knew it was not touching the road. And then I was afraid that I was going to be like shot down as a UFO or something. But basically I levitated as a young mother, my entire vehicle, the rest of the way home, which must have been 20 miles or more. And so I know that even within the construct, even within your stupid car, you are still magical. So even if you are graphenated, dig deep for the magic that you are. Dig deep. Because no matter what, the humans have endured tons of genetic experimentation and poisoning. And look at who we still are. So, midnight in the garden of good or evil, just play. And if a red dragon shows up, which can happen, why can't you play with that as much as that thing scare you? What if you asked it questions and made jokes, and who knows? Just be a little bit more magical with this unreality, because when the going gets weird, the weird get going. Bye-bye for now.